Thank you.
Hang on. Okay. So let's just go to share screen and Acrobat. Share. So how do I get rid of this meeting as recording continue? There we go. All right. So I thought we would start with the back page of the 7th edition with the famous "The pen is mightier than the sword." In this case, the word spacing is pretty mighty, but other than that, it's a beautiful example of the kind of lettering that was sort of aimed at movie cards. That was one of the main targets of the speedball pens and books. So it's a way to get going. And I'm not advancing, shoot. I guess I just clicked. All right. So here's our cover, and the idea behind the cover was that the three of us editors were all going to be represented on the cover. So it's I did the lettering at the top, and Sachin's S is in the middle, and Suzanne Cunningham's, Sachin Shah and Suzanne Cunningham's pointed pen lettering for the subtitle is at the bottom. And because I was the only one who was doing the designing, I was putting all these things together. So they had no choice in, they had veto power, of course, but they didn't have any choice. This was presented to them. I think this is like almost the very last thing we did was the cover. But I found with the, once I presented things, that there really wasn't too much argument. I kept expecting people to say, hey, we can't do that, but they were pretty accepting of everything I brought to them. So this paper, I want to point out, was my last sheet of a very loud laid surface. It really felt like it was almost a synthetic material, and I don't know where I got this paper. I can't find it anymore. So I didn't even try to write it out in order. I was just doing the letters over and over again, and then pasted them. I can't go back. There we go. Now the arrows are working. Sorry. Anyway, so with Sachin had done, in fact, we all started off by doing the Speedball textbook and the subtitle. And then from there, I was going to paste these things together. And so I took the S from one of Sachin's submissions for the title. And what I did with this was to cut it by hand out of paper and then mounted it to float a little bit. So we got a little bit of the shadow. So the title page, of course, is using Julian's lettering from, I believe it started with the 22nd edition from 1991, and combined it with my brush calligraphy of the 25th, which actually was originally done for a paper and ink catalog for their 25th anniversary. So it's repurposed here for the title page. And then I got a big selection of these great vintage ads, vintage speedball ads from Hobie McQuarrie, and I picked the one that was the most calligraphic, and used that for the verso page of the spread. And here's a few more of these ads. Hobie sent me a good 15 or 20 of these that he had cut out from various art magazines and sign painting magazines, and he sent me the originals, ones that he'd saved. If you read Hobie's article, or if you know Hobie, he has a spectacular morgue that he has been gathering since the 1940s. And it was so, he has such an amazing morgue that he did 10 years of a self-published magazine just from the contents of his morgue. And so he trusted me with these real ads, and here's a few more of those. These I found myself, though, back in the 90s when we did a story on Ross George and speedball for Alphabet when I was the editor from 89 to 92. And these are really interesting ads where George decided that he would attack traditional tools, in this case, a reed pen and a quill in both of these ads, and say that the speedball has had replaced those and made life easier. But he inadvertently started a little bit of a feud with Father Kadich, who you can see here. This is his 2-volume book, Reed Pen and Brush Alphabets. And Father Kadich totally believed in writing with a reed pen. And those of you who've written with a reed know that it has its own charms and I don't want to say peculiarities, but the things that it brings to writing that a metal pen does not bring. So it's really a lovely tool to use. And I was fortunate enough to take a class from Father Kadich right at the beginning of my calligraphy education. And the very first words he said to us in the class, just by way of making a splash, is he said, "To the true calligrapher, speedball is a dirty word." But the interesting thing about this is that they were, both Ross George and Father Kadich were kindred spirits in the way they worked, that Father Kadich believed in. He was a Chicago sign painter early on in his career, and he always believed in that and made an example of that, that the people who would have painted the letters on stone to be cut into the stone could walk into a Chicago sign shop in the 1920s in a toga and get a job, that they had the skills that a modern day sign painter had. And so this is from the 7th edition. And then this is a plate from Reed Pen and Brush Alphabets that show the same kind of building up letters using a pen. And here is, this is my beginning calligraphy teacher on the left, Reese Bullen, and Father Kadich on the right. While he was in Eureka in 1973, when I took my very first class from Reese, started in January of that year, and Reese and Lenore Cady brought Father Kadich to do a workshop about 2 months later. So I was so wet behind the ears, but so fortunate to be able to have a class with a legend. And just about the only thing I remember is the first thing he said, as well as him doing a gorgeous pink R on gray slate with a brush that happened so fast and so beautiful. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Lee Littlewood is in the audience today, and Lee Littlewood is a sign painting friend of mine that I met in 1982, and 10 years went by before we started comparing notes, and it turns out that Lee drove down from Portland to take the class with Father Kadich. And then years after that, I found out that Gina Jonas had also traveled down from Seattle to be in that class. So really an auspicious class there. This is, well, yeah, this is one of Kadich's compositions where he talks about this idea that a master professional sign writer of Chicago wished he could have written imperial majuscules the way, which then were cut in stone. So this same idea about a sign painter in 20th century Chicago and a lettering artisan in the 1st century Rome were the same guy. And just last night, I was looking through my flat files for other things, and I found this poster, and it's Kadich's evolution of lettering, and look how everything is leading down to modern show card and sign writing. And once more, he's talking about Chicago sign painting as being the last evolution of all our history of lettering. Roman lettering at least. And here's a great picture from Paul Shaw's book, The Eternal Letter, of Kadich doing a rubbing of the inscription of the Trajan column in around 1950. This is a Kadich slate that is in the Harrison collection. The Harrison collection has 3 Kadich slates. If you're up in Portland, there are several different, there are some carved lithostones in the Reed College Library. So there are places to see this. If you live in the Midwest, of course, you can go to the Kadich Museum on the campus of St. Ambrose College, and there's plenty of places to see Kadich's work in person. A couple of the other things that we have in the Harrison collection are a Kadich rubbing, and we have 2 portraits here of Susie Taylor. Susie Taylor holding her hand over the Kadich rubbing. Philippe Debas took this picture when he was visiting San Francisco from Paris, and the bottom picture was taken at one of our Saturday meetings that Linnea and Susie organized back about, God, how long ago is that, Linnea? Anyway, we would meet once a month and explore the Harrison collection on a Saturday morning. And we had a Roman day, and Susie pulled out this incredible thing that Alan Blackman had painted, the words of the Roman inscription like a sign painter's show card. And this one, I know you've probably just seen this in Alphabet, but this was a piece that Michael Clark did. The upper left was the way he made this thing for reproduction. What he was aiming for in the upper right is the look of a rubbing of an incised carving. And he did it by doing the pencil rubbing on a piece of tracing paper or vellum, and then he did a chromatech transfer of white on top of that so that the camera ready artwork could look like a rubbing. And then this was 1993, and just last week, no, 1997, and just last year, I'm sorry, not last week, Annika Peterson and Michael were talking, and they decided to try to see what this would look like as a carving. So she carved it this small, and this was recently sent to Michael as a gift. They did a trade, and Michael turned right around and donated it to the Harrison collection. So this slate, this piece of slate, is now in the Harrison, and he sent it to me to deliver with his portfolios. Those are discussed in the latest Alphabet. And so I had this for a while, and even seeing this picture of it in her hand, Annika sent this picture, it seems bigger than when you hold this in your hand. You just cannot believe how tiny these letters are, perfectly incised carved by Annika. It's a really wonderful thing that we now have here in San Francisco to go take a look when we can get back in. So since we talked about Hobie's donation of those ads, I did have to send them back. But let's do a little bit of, let's introduce Hobie here. Hobie is not in the crowd today. He is completely anti-computer. We're hoping that we can get one of his sons to show him the recording of this, because I put a few pages of his work in here. Everything on this page, not everything, I think there's one extra. This one is not in the Speedball book, but the rest of these are in the Speedball book. And this is a picture of Hobie in his 3-story house with studios on all 3 floors, and books everywhere, framed comic strips on the wall. He's been a man of many sign painting and comic book lettering and graphic design lettering, does all kinds of stuff. But one of the things that he concentrated on was silk screening. his signs so he could do multiples. And he first learned sign painting by being a screen apprentice. And so a lot of these things that he does, he is as comfortable with a knife in his hand as he is with a brush or a pen. So the lettering at the top and the red panel with "May the Deepest Joy" were both cut with a knife. He would do the lettering with a brush for the top one, probably with a pen for the red one, and then put what we call it is that golden stuff, amberlith. It's a film on acetate, and you would cut that stuff out and peel it off and then adhere it to a silkscreen to be the mask of the silkscreen. So believe it or not, these soft organic letters were cut with a knife. Hobie's wonderful with that. Here's a little bit of his forceful but casual calligraphy. I love the power of Hobie's writing. And a couple more things that, for him, his Christmas cards, the easiest thing for him to do was to cut a film stencil and make a silkscreen and silkscreen his own Christmas cards. So if you ever got a Christmas card from Hobie, he did the work by hand and printed it by hand. And a little bit, this is a brush casual down here at the bottom, the Hawaii. And the other thing that Hobie is very involved with is comic strip art. And he was also a comic strip lettering artist. So he did both Steve Canyon and Dennis the Menace. Those artists would do the artwork and draw the thought bubble or the speech bubble and send it to Hobie, and he would hand letter that stuff. In fact, let me go back here just a second. We're not going backwards, darn it. There we go. This one. This issue was devoted to comic strip lettering, and this was the masthead of the Broadside, which was his magazine, his little publication for showing the contents of his morgue. There were over 100 issues, and you could see what wonderful. I mean, this is the idea right here of what comic strip hand lettering is supposed to be doing. I recently I found a wallet. And when I returned the wallet, it turned out that it was a guy who called himself the lettering artist for a comic book, a self-produced comic book with a gang of people. And he said that he was the letterer, but all he did was set the type using comic strip style lettering. Not as bad as Comic Sans, but that same idea. And then in the credits, he would say that he was the lettering artist. So Hobie did it by hand. And because he knew so many comic strip artists, that he has several where he is a character in the comic strip. This one was I didn't know this artist, but he wrote a whole strip about Sergeant McQuarrie. He was in the Korean War. And then this, Steve Canyon was Milton Caniff was the artist for Steve Canyon, and Hobie had done the work for him. So the note down here is thanking him for his years of service. So back to the this kind of ephemera for the Speedball. This is an ad during the 12th edition period. The editions of the Speedball came out irregularly, just whenever George was ready with a new one. So the 12th edition was published in 1933. They did the next one in 5 years, but there were much larger gaps and there were shorter gaps between the editions. So this ad could have been composed at any time during that period, but they're definitely showing examples of the exemplars from the issue, as well as these fantastic illustrations of showing the size and the action of each of the sizes of the 4 different styles of pens. So when we first started working on the 25th edition, the 24th had pages devoted to each tool. and I thought that we could save a little space by turning that guide to how each one of these things works into one page spread. And it gave me a chance to use these terrific Ross George illustrations from that poster. So we saved a bunch of pages that we could then devote to to each of the sections. And when we started this, it came up with this concept even before we had decided whether we were going to be a vertical format or a horizontal format. So the first example of this was in the horizontal format, and I also tried a layout using Julian's italic page from the 22nd. Actually, it's been in all the editions since the 22nd. And even though we were really looking to get new artwork in the magazine, in the book, there were some things that I knew that we were going to carry over. And the first one for me was Julian's italic. So I started with this. We'll talk some more about that when we get to the italic section. But here is a card of brand new pens. I wish I knew what time period this this would have been sold. This is from the collection of Steve Hosmer, who is my sign painting friend here in Santa Cruz. And yesterday we laid out all the books that we had between us. And he wanted me to point out to you that he has 7 14s. And this, sadly enough, is a Xerox copy of the first edition. And I think Judy Caston mentioned in the Italian presentation of this that Mark Otis, who's featured in the book and will be showing up later in the slideshow, had access to a first edition and let Judy and Joanne use it for the 22nd and the 23rd. Judy, do you have anything to say about that now? Hold down the space bar if you do. Okay, never mind. And here's the other thing that Steve has done with that he likes to do is design posters, but he approaches it from a really unusual angle in that he paints them like a sign on some sort of substrate pretty big, and then he has them reproduced for whatever poster. He sells a lot of posters just as artwork, and he has also taken on lots of commercial work designing posters. The Buttery is a local bakery, and Pearl Alley is a restaurant in downtown Santa Cruz. And sign painting enamels, hand painted just like a sign. And the Pearl Alley poster here is using an old technique called schmaltz, which is ground glass that is glued to the surface of the sign so that it actually sparkles. So this is black ground glass that he did on the original, and then they tried to capture that when they reproduced the poster. There's also a piece of abalone in the cat's medallion on his collar. So Ross George, of course, was a genius. There's just no getting around it. These are the most unique and detailed while still being so easily seen. The forms of the letters are so easily seen, but if you go in and look inside that, you'll see the shapes of these brushes showing just how each thing is happening, like drawn terminals on the edges of these horizontal strokes. And you can see the brush, but you can still see the letter just perfectly. Alan Blackman says this is his favorite alphabet exemplar in the world. I kind of go for the spurred Gothic, the dry brush spurred Gothic, same deal. Look at how many, this O has, a half dozen brushes in it, but the O is still there, as well as the texture of the brush. It's just genius stuff, really wonderful. And I've used because I love the spurred Gothic dry brush plate so much, I've used it as background for page 3 and 6 in this book, And I also used it on the cover of the magazine when we did that story back in the 90s. So it's always been one of my favorites. And the other thing that we did with the spurred Gothic, this is from this a little bit earlier than the brush version came out in the 1938 edition. I'm thinking, I hope I got that right, but this silhouette version done with a pen, and these were done with a B, which is the round nib. And then in the instructions, he says he turns the pen over on its back and uses the edge of it like a calligraphy pen to draw the terminals, the serifs and the terminals. So I took this plate and turned it into a typeface so that we could use that for the headings of the book. So all those things that you see in those panels at the top of the pages, as well as the numerals, came from that pen-made spurred Gothic. And this is one of my favorite little stories from the history of speedball, is that here's another brilliant plate by George, and his famous bug, his signature in the center there, it's RFG, Ross F. George, and he's using that like it's a light source. So these letters are supposed to be raised carved caps, so that it's a convex where the peak of the letter is coming out towards you, and the light source in the back is what is establishing which side of the letter is getting the shadow, which side of the letter is getting the light. So it's really brilliant. But then in the first one in the 1960s took his plate, cut it apart, and put it into three horizontal format rather than a vertical, and lost all sense of light. So that, you can see how light some letters feel compared to how dark other letters feel, because they tore this plate apart without understanding why it was so crucial that they stay where they were because of this light source. A really interesting anomaly that happened there. But that same edition was the 20th edition was when they first had Ray DeBall be one of the contributors. So they made up for this gaffe with asking DeBall to be a contributor. So the first plate in the book, because Judy and Joanne had put Georgiana's left-handed calligrapher's page at the start of the 22nd edition, that just seemed like the place to start. And I've always loved this. The 24th edition, which was done by Randy Hassan and Angie Vangelis, they had taken the information and the illustrations, but then set the instructions in type. And I just thought that this thing was always such a glorious composition to start with that I wanted to return it to its pretty much original form. But one of the things that I did frequently throughout the book was take single color black and white artwork and turn it into multiple colors, usually just two. And it turned out that that was really a lot of fun to bring a second color into these things. So you'll see it a lot. Here's the half page of the facing page where I took Ross George's spacing illustration and turned it into a two-color piece of art, just like with Georgiana's. And the most fun, of course, is doing that with ducti, I should say, and you'll see some more of that. So the first place we started was the A and B nibs, and this is Gemma Black at the top. Even though those what we're seeing there is painted, the ground or the negative space has been painted, and it's just the color of the paper coming through. Those are square edge letters that could have been done with an A nib, and then Randy Hassan's B nib pangram here. And I want to talk about Randy for just a second. Randy, when he got the job to do the 24th edition, he fell into the Ross George rabbit hole and ended up writing an entire book about it. Letterform Archive is supposed to be publishing it, but so far it's not happening. But here is the cover for that book, done with a D nib, and the D nib is the oval shaped nib that is no longer manufactured, but they can be found, and they're really useful for doing thick and thicker type lettering. And Randy was the person who told Kelly Braun. Kelly's in the audience today. Hi, Kelly. Kelly was the executive producer of our edition, and I guess Randy's edition as well. And Randy recommended me for the design part of the 25th. So thanks to Randy, and he's been a big help with the with this edition, as well as written this amazing book that I can't wait to get published one of these days. I think Speedball ought to be the one to publish it if Letterform Archive isn't going to get around to it. So the really exciting thing about the A and B nibs for this edition was that even though Michael Clark had been mentioned in the 24th on how the special way he likes to use an A and a B nib, we never had a ductus for it before. So Michael has become great friends with the wonderful young Italian calligrapher Chiara Riva, and she has really gone to town with Michael's technique of lifting losing contact with the round nib, the square and the round nib. And so Chiara did this great exemplar, and look at her little system here of having dots for full contact and open dots for contact loss, both in the, for the illustration, as well as in the ductus. Just an amazing, beautiful, innovative little exemplar. And look at her pen scale, the dots. I thought that was hilarious, as well as a perfect illustration of the proportions of pen nib to height ratios and spacing. So on the recto side of the spread, we have Chiara's work at the top and the bottom, and the two middle pieces are Michael's. And I was assuming that they were B nibs when we did the book, but I'm sorry, this one was a B nib and this one was an A nib. But Michael told me later that this is actually a B nib. The round one, I'm sorry, it's an A nib, but he rounded it off by hand. And I think I've got, well, I'm going to show you Chiara's first, and then we'll get to Michael's. This is some of Chiara's work. That amazing that you see in the book was this same amazing that we're seeing here in the full color picture immediately after it was written, while the ink was still wet. Same thing with the drunk. Just gorgeous stuff. And this one looks like it was probably done with an A nib, but done the same way, where she's losing contact and getting the strokes to taper. And look at the lively dance that she's got going on with this amazing piece. So here's Michael's, and this is the one that was done with an A nib, the square nib, and then rounded off by hand. He went back in, and if he had used a B, it would have been direct writing, but he did it with an A and then softened it up. And we were talking on the phone just recently about this, and I said, well, Michael, why did you do that? He goes, it was fun. It was just fun. So really gorgeous stuff. So next we came to the Roman caps, and this was another one where I just thought we had the perfect exemplar already, and we reused John Stevens' Roman caps. It was in a horizontal format, and he agreed to let me reshape it into a vertical. And we paired it with these photographs of the photograph of the inscription on the Trajan column, which I was lucky enough to take that picture myself. This is the afternoon before we were going down into the appointment that I had to get down into Trajan's Forum and see this up close. And I looked up some stuff on Trajan, and it turns out that he had died 1900 years and 26 days before I got to go down into the forum to see this. It was 117, and I was there in 2017. He died August 8th. So just 20 days past 1900 years from Trajan's death. And one of the things I just discovered this morning is that he was coming back from a campaign traveling through modern day Turkey, whatever they called it back then. And the area that he died in was called Salinius. And after he died, the name was changed to Trajanopolis. But it's in modern day Turkey on the southern coast now. And here, another picture from Paul Shaw's book is virtually that same spot in sometime in the 1860s. And if we go backwards, you can see that all of these buildings have been around for at least 150 years, some much longer than that, but same buildings. And then here's this was the cover of the Roman issue of Alphabet. And to give you a sense of scale. And then finally, these were the two women that were responsible for me to get the opportunity to get down inside here. The woman on the left is Cinzia Conti, and she was the director of the restoration for the last more than 30 years. She had been working on the restoration of the column. And the first couple times I went to Rome to finally see the Trajan, which I heard about on my very first day of calligraphy class in Arcata. And the first couple times I went to Rome, it was covered in scaffolding. So I didn't see it in person and finally until 2012, and then was able to get up close in 2017. And the woman next to her is Esther Santella. And what happened with this, I haven't told this story before because I'm afraid you're all going to want to stay in her Airbnb in Rome, but we just picked an Airbnb randomly. And she wrote to us after we had, set up the reservation. She said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I wrote her back. I said, "Could you get me in to see the Trajan column?" And she did. She's an architect and an artist in Rome, and she went ahead and did the research to find out who to ask to do this. Asked me to write a sort of a little bit of a letter to the Trajan office, and she got us in. It was an amazing day. I asked Chiara Riva to come with us and to help translate. Esther's English wasn't that great, and she wasn't a lettering artist, and Cinzia didn't speak much English at all. So Chiara came along, and it was really great. And my girlfriend Robin was with us, and we were having such a good time. I was just taking this picture of Cinzia and Esther, but when I looked at the pictures afterwards, I realized that I had caught Robin and Chiara celebrating what a great time we were having, totally by accident. But they're in the background. It was a great day. One of the best days of my life, actually. So the pages following that are the Roman capital variations, and John was kind enough to let us use one of my all-time favorite pieces of lettering, even after all this time. And this is, over 35 years ago. I still would put this in my top 10 at least, if not top 5. I haven't compiled the other candidates in my top 10, but I have always just loved this. The design sense, the interlocking, the interaction between all of the letters. Look how the S, those two S's are bumping into that O. It's just exquisite. And every letter is a little bit different. The two Y's right next to each other. It's an audacious piece of lettering and really amazing. This is one of my first choices to go in the book. And it's followed by a spread with lettering by Julian and Ewan, Julian Waters and Ewan Clayton, of course. Two really great contrasting pieces. And the piece by Julian is from a series where he's doing quotes by John Stuart Mills. So I thought what I'd do here really quickly is just show you the whole set. I dug these out last night. I was really glad that I still had them. Stop that. Adobe interrupting our proceedings here. So there were 5 of these, and each one, you know, we have a black letter and uncial and humanistic and an italic, all the same kind of proportions, not exactly the same, same color scheme. Gorgeous set. I wonder if Julian could tell us if these are still available. And the other part of the Roman capital variations was this page where we have a piece by Jean Larcher that he did actually for Friends of Calligraphy. Jean Larcher is the wonderful French calligrapher, and he's done these really severely individualistic, personal square caps for this poster. And the poster was, it's really a lovely thing. It actually wasn't printed. These were just a few cards, silkscreen cards done by the library's sign shop for placement around the library. And Susie gave me one of these. So it's Susie's calligraphy at the bottom and Jean Larcher's square caps at the top. And then below that are more traditional takes on the square caps by Alice. And that was taken from this poster here on the right. And then at the bottom are the only rustics in the book, some rustics that I tried, but oh, you're kidding me, come on now. Oh. That blank page was supposed to be a page of Susie Taylor's rustic that didn't make the transition from InDesign to Acrobat. I'm so sorry. I wonder if I got, well, when we break for questions, I'll see if I can find the piece and I'll hold it up to the camera. It's really a gorgeous piece, very dense with Susie's rustics. The uncial section has this beautiful piece by Yukimi Anand. And this one is, it's so classic, but it's still so personal. And I loved it that it followed right after Jean Larcher's lettering in the book, because it's a quote by Jean Larcher about his one of his feelings about lettering. And as long as we're here, let's show you a little bit of Yukimi's other work. This was the cover of Alphabet a year ago, where she was using, she's greatly influenced by Herman Killian these days. There's a Killian story in the latest Alphabet, I'm sure you've seen, and Yukimi talks about her feelings of Killian's work. And she says after 2 years of serious study, she's finally ready to try some variations of her own. Up to now, she's been really faithful. And the piece that she's referring to here with that cover is this original by Killian that I actually was lucky enough to purchase from his wife. And when I went down to Yukimi's house to interview her for the article, I took that with me, and she took a bunch of pictures, and she used that as the source for the letters for the alphabet she made specifically for the cover of the journal. And then this is a really recent piece that she just posted a few weeks ago, and it is so much fun, and the colors are so great. So she's, you know, just a wonderful artist, very precise about everything. And even when she cuts loose like this, you can tell that she's in charge of everything that's happening. So this one, this was the rejected foundational page, first page of the foundational. And my hand is pretty shaky these days, and I haven't been doing a whole lot of precise calligraphy like this. So I decided to tackle the foundational exemplar, and I based it on Irene Wellington's exemplar that is at the top of the page. but I had consultants. Julian and Sheila were really helpful with lots of suggestions for the book, and they convinced me that this should not be the exemplar for the foundational. So it was then torn apart. We took this page apart. Oh, here's a piece of Irene's. I just put this in last night. This was a card or a triptych piece that she made for her fiance, Hubert Wellington. They were married the year after this was done in 1943. And this is from Ann Heckel and Ewan Clayton's brand new book about Irene Wellington. Really charming piece. So I figured that if you're going to ask Sheila Waters for advice, you should take it. And so we replaced my ductus with hers. And this was one of those single color ductuses that it was just so much fun to go back in and in Photoshop and erase one color, erase the guides and save the lettering, and then open that file up again and erase the lettering and save the directions and turn it into a two-color piece. And we still used Irene's as the decorative banner across the top. But the really big thing about this was that this was the place where I put the text together to go along with the Italian humanistic as well as the English foundational, because they they both came from Carolingian models from back in the 9th and 10th century, but they had two different histories. And so I was really happy with the way this came out by putting those two things together. Sachin had asked Elmo van Slingerland to do the alphabet models for the humanistic bookhand. And so he sent several things. And I used his, this thick and thin alphabet, or bold and lightweight alternation alphabet, as the banner decoration across the top. But the original, here's the original of that, had a quote running in between that. And Elmo was kind enough to allow me to erase that and just use the letters for for that banner. And Elmo, of course, is such an exuberant calligrapher, and he sent several different examples of his. This one was kind of a Gothic feeling for his bookhand, and it's on the same page with two of Julian's gorgeous bookhand pieces, really different weights, and he's using a split pen. I think this top one is a tribute to Hermann Zopf in a book that's just about to come out about other calligraphers honoring Zopf's work. And here's a little bit more of Elmo's work, this really free bookhand at the top, and then this is pointed brushwork at the bottom. And this libeo, if I'm saying that right, is really reminds me of Georgia. It feels a lot like Georgia Deaver's work. We'll see a piece very much like this a little bit later. And one more wild piece from Elmo. Now, this is Julian's, the italic page in the 22nd edition from 1991. And the two very first things that I tried when I was starting the design of the book was to, besides the tool page, was figuring out the italic, because I knew that I was going to use this. This is such a wonderful classic. And the limitations of the printing in 1991, or the cost of the full color printing, they were not able to afford full color all the way through. And we are so lucky in the, it's one of the things that's happening in modern day, is that it's almost cheaper to print full color than it is to go black and white. And certainly it's cheaper than going two press runs. A two color job is now more work for a printer than full color. So because we had that option that I had full color to design with throughout, I started thinking about getting the ductus away from the exemplar itself and just doing a concentrated ductus on the rectus side here. So this was really the first page spread that was laid out in the book. And Julian was okay with me, tearing apart that original and just taking, the letters that I chose that I felt represented the action of the alphabet that everybody needed to see, and then getting the ductus away from the letters themselves so that they can shine on their own. And this was the start of the design. It certainly got a lot more busy than this as we went along, but this was the first thing that happened. The other classic piece that I knew had to be in the book was Sheila's italic variations. I fell in love with this as a teacher. I fell in love with this this example here of these 11 different variations of the what you can do with an italic when you change the variables. And I just thought that there's nothing that is more exciting for a beginning student to look at something like this and say, man, I can do all of these different flavors, and it's all here in one page. Had to be there. Then we paired that with some more italic variations, a couple of Julian's. This Transforming Grace is just so wonderful, wonderfully graceful. And this is showing the top thing by Julian was a detail from one of his pieces that is showing the bounce technique that that I tried to illustrate a couple pages later. And then John's Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters, still one of the most gorgeous examples of italic you're ever going to see. That M is something else. So that's another repeat performance. But the only thing here, well, actually Julian's Transforming Grace hadn't been in the book before, but The Poet in the Pen was from Madeline Dinkle. And we will be talking about her work and what it means to me and to Julian, and you as a calligrapher if you start to embrace the way that she worked with multiple strokes. We'll get to that. Now, one of my absolute favorite spreads in the book was this page of Alice and Georgia and Howard Glasser facing Susie Taylor's incredible italic across the page from that. And I've told this story before, but I had this page laid out in a different way, and I needed something kind of vertical to go in this spot next to Howard's piece. And I picked this wonderful piece by Georgia and put them together. And it wasn't until weeks later that I noticed that we had this head looking at the letters from a headmaster's study. So two studies of heads right next to each other. So this is the losing contact instructional page. I've taught this for a long time, and I've had this illustration in black and white in my handouts, but I've always been able to explain it in person. So to finally get it down on paper was a bit of a challenge. I was happy with that, and I'm just showing it to you now as an excuse to show you Christine Colasurdo's work here, because this piece on the left is a sort of a glorified weathergram using that same idea of losing contact with the pen, same way that we were talking about with Michael's and Chiara's A and B nib work, where you're losing contact with the paper, like this illustration here, that as you lift the pen, the bead of ink is like a curtain that's drawing across the width of the pen, and as it's moving, it's continuing to make its mark, so that you have a mark that will swell and recede, even though the only thing that's touching the corner of the paper is the only thing that's touching the paper is the corner of the pen. So trying to get that going is a really exciting way to write, and I love it. a lot. And Christine did this gorgeous piece here on the left, but we ran into trouble with getting permission from the poet's estate to use these words. So it didn't make it into the book. So I'm really happy to be able to show it to you here. And we also have a piece of Sashin's where he's writing with the corner of a, what do they call these things? Parallel pens. And even a pen as sharp as the parallel will work this way, but I found that it works better if it's really wet. So if you're going to try this technique with a parallel pen, you should still have a bottle of ink open and use it like a dip pen, even though it's being fed in, from inside, it's not wet enough to do that kind of work. And then finally, this, how many times am I going to say the word gorgeous today? This is Christine's book, a book of her own poetry. And her cover design was to have a half jacket on the pamphlet that housed this long form poem of Christine's. And once we couldn't get the permission to use the poetry on that weathergram on the last page, Christine revealed that she was kind of happy about that because she had stopped doing calligraphy of anybody's words but her own. And she's, of course, a writer, a poet, and as well as a prose author. And she's decided that she's only going to do calligraphy of her own words. And so she was kind of relieved that the Mary Oliver quote didn't make it into the book. This was also in the running for that section of the book because she did bounce. You can see the bounce, especially here on this A, and with this 3-prong pen, really beautiful piece of work. Then we got to the Neuland area, and this turned out to be a big section because there are so many possibilities here. Again, John was kind enough to let us use one of his, this is one of his teaching ducti for his classes on the lower right, and mine is at the top. I'm trying to be somewhat faithful to the typeface, which is on the left, and John is, he usually just starts from the idea, the concept of the typeface or the monoline letter and lets it go in an individual direction. So this beautiful ductus. And while we're here, the Neuland typeface that I'm using is a digital typeface from the Alphabets Incorporated and now defunct Type Foundry from Chicago that was started by Peter Fraterdeus and some of his friends in Chicago. And they put out several great typefaces, and their version of the Neuland type is my favorite. There's 2 sets of caps because there was no lowercase that ended up getting published in the original typeface. So they picked 2 of the different sizes for that, and it's really wonderful. When we did a story on Neuland, you'll see the cover in just a second, back in 2015, and I've had the AI version of Neuland for quite a while, but I asked Peter if he would make it available again because we were going to use it in the issue and advertise it, and he allowed that to happen. But now Peter suddenly died last summer from a brain aneurysm. Just shocking news. So if you didn't get a copy of the AI Neuland, it's gone now. But here's to Peter. He was definitely a wonderful Renaissance man, musician, as well as an Asian style calligrapher and a Roman calligrapher, and just knew all kinds of stuff about everything. Terrific guy. Came to visit in Santa Cruz just the year before he died. I couldn't have been more stunned when I heard about it. So here's to you, Peter. Thinking about you today. So that same issue, this is 2015, and I wanted to do a big story on Neuland, and wanted to have a cutout cover, and I knew John was the man to do that. I actually did a little mock-up using some of the work that he had already done with these overlapping letters, and brought it up to him when he was teaching at Letterform Archive, and he agreed immediately. And this was the piece that he made for this, because we needed it to be so square and the exact size of the magazine. So he very carefully met those requirements, and we ended up with this laser cut cover. And this, by the way, was laser cut. It was not die cut, which meant that the guys at the community printers had to put this in the laser cutter by hand, each one individually, wait 2 minutes for it to be cut, pull it out and put another one in. There was something like 35 hours of a guy standing there cutting these covers while feeding the laser cutter. So turned out pretty great. We were all thrilled. And now this is another one of John's pieces. It was a birth announcement for our friend Joyce and Jim Tita's son's son, so their grandson. And John did the birth announcement. It's like a poster, and it has the most lyrical Neuland I've ever seen. And I asked John if he would maybe do an alphabet exemplar of this for the book, and he agreed. But once it was done, he didn't like it well enough to be in the book. So 2 days ago, he agreed to let us show you. This was the alphabet that he didn't feel like it was speedball material, is sort of what I remember the reason that we didn't use it. But look at this N. The way it curves is the same one as that those two N's in Quentin and Keone. So graceful, so wonderful. John, I love that N so much. And this is really beautiful. He did a second one of these, and I'm holding that back for the Chicago show, but he also sent this along as an example of, the Neuland in use for a really specific flavor. Also spectacular. And one last monoline thing that we included in the book, a real quirky thing, was this alphabet that came from, that began in Lisbeth Bowden's bathroom. This was around the top of the tile of the bathtub, and it's lyrics to a Jacques Brel song. And when I visited, I took this picture, and I just, couldn't stop thinking about it. So went ahead and tried a pen version of it. So my pen version is on the bottom, and Lisbeth uses different styles of it for different things. And she sent me this piece at the top. It's just a pencil drawing with these same kind of letters. And this is after we had done this, but those letters were based on the bathtub lettering. And we've been talking about doing something with these letters. And I wanted to call it Bowden's Bathhouse. And she said, no, let's call it Zeep, which is Flemish for soap. So a few years later, she said she had bad news for me. They were redecorating the bathtub, or the bathroom. And so I thought those letters were gone forever. But the next time I went to visit, she handed me a roll of something. She says, you know what this is? And I had no idea, but that was wallpaper that was on. So she gave me a salvaged piece from the remodeling, and this hangs in my bathroom now. And then these are later versions of the Zeep letters. And one of these days we'll do something with these letters. But she and I are both getting really different flavors out of it, and lots of people are trying these letters now. So whenever you see something like this, they started with Lisbeth, and the runic quality of these letters is something that appeals to all of her brothers and sisters. And if you don't know, that family, they're the children of Belgium's preeminent calligrapher in the 50s and 60s, Jef Bodens, and all five of them are lettering artists, and amazing lettering artists. So the black letter spread, this is another one of my favorites in the book, and it's talked about in the latest alphabet that not only are the two illustrations on this spread, but also the text are all by Ward, and the piece on the right was discovered at Ewan's house, and Ward didn't know that it was there. He had lost track of this piece, forgotten who he'd given it to, and so he was really happily surprised to see the when I came back from visiting Ewan and sent him pictures of this piece. But the Gothic buzzsaw, famous Gothic buzzsaw, has been in several versions of the speedball textbook over the years. And one of the first things I did was tell him that we wanted to rerun that, and he wanted to redo it. So this is specially made for the speedball textbook by Ward just recently, back in the fall, to be in the book. So brand new, fresh buzzsaw. Gorgeous work, Ward. I'm so happy with this spread. And as long as we're here, I thought I'd show you a little bit of Ward's work. This is the the list of participants in the Black Sabbath when Atelier Gargoyle was on Bryant Street for those 4 years. And they listed everybody who ever came to one of the came to the Black Sabbath meetings that they had there. And this is in the Harrison collection. So you can go check this out. And when Ward and Linnea moved from San Francisco down to Half Moon Bay, they needed to redo the studio's mark. And Ward got this done in time for that black issue with John's cutout cover. This was freshly done in 2015. And there are some really great letters in here. Look at that, the A in Atelier and the M and the H and the M are both buoyant. Somebody have a comment? Okay. And the circular alphabet is not something that was unique to the speedball book. Here's a little buzzsaw that he made for Alice down in the lower left. And when I delivered Michael Clark's albums and Annika Peterson's carving to the library a few weeks ago, we're just about to do a story, and the next issue is going to have a big story on Karina Meister. And so I asked to see Karina's, whatever holdings the Harrison collection had of Karina's stuff. And they didn't have much work, but they have all of her English language correspondence. So there were 4 of these postcards from Ward to Karina. So it's a great opportunity to show you Ward's really powerful, even more powerful than Hobie's, italic, his handwriting from his famous use of postcards. And then this is an exclusive today. Nobody's seen this until today. Ward sent along with the new Gothic buzzsaw this take on the speedball. And maybe when we get to the question and answers, Ward can tell us the story of these quotes, the quote marks, because they're quite outlandish. And that red dot on the exclamation mark is Ward's dot. The original had that one splash of red. This is the piece that follows Ward's spread, and where I was gathering a lot of textura pieces. And the reason I want to show you this one is that Raul Martinez's piece in the lower right-hand corner was not the original one that was planned to be in that spot. So we actually had, this is my favorite all-time piece by Raul, this quote from Howl by Allen Ginsberg, with this just unbelievable, it feels like Art Deco, sort of, you know, it reminds me of as the typeface Arnold Bachlin, Raul, for in that lavender that the black letter is on top of. This was in the show in Sebastopol a few years ago, and I just fell in love with it then and really wanted it to be in this spot. But it was another one of those cases where we were not able to get permission from Ginsberg's agents in time to use that. So at the very last minute, I had to figure out something else to go in this spot. In fact, when Raul's piece was in there with the lavender, it was the determining factor for the color of this entire spread. Alfredo Saniner sent this in with this orange background, but I wrote to him and asked if we could change it to blue to go along with the blues and the purples that we already had. And Julian's piece, which was red and black to begin with, we were going to change that to blue. So this is supposed to be a blue spread, but then when we lost the possibility of using the Howell piece, I went and found this other piece by Raul that still had red in the piece itself, the Raphael. So this is the original, but I needed it to fit next to Alfredo's piece in a vertical stance. And so again, I went, asking artists if I could change their artwork to fit with the layout of our pages. And Raul was kind enough to allow us to not use the illustration and to change the last line into 2 lines to make a vertical format. So this is the glorious piece, the way it's Raul intended for you to see it. And thank you so much, Raul, for letting us get it here on the Textura spread. And here's another black letter piece that was intended for the book that we didn't even try to get permission to use these lyrics. This is Meredith Klein's black letter piece, and I just love this, especially the lighting, with the lightning coming through and just starting to make those letters next to the fork of lightning start to glow. But the release form that every artist had to sign said that they were responsible for having permission to use the words that they were writing with. So with the time involved, Meredith looked at the permission form and just said, we're not going to be able to get permission from the Cohen publishers in time. And so she just said, let's not use it. And of all the people that we tried, and Kelly Braun was the person who did all the legwork on this, writing to these publishers multiple times and then just not hearing from them. But we didn't even try with Cohen's. And I always think, when I listen to lately, when I listen to Leonard, I keep thinking he would have loved to have his words written by Meredith Klein, I think. I wish we had tried, but here, this is the first time you guys are getting to see this in the context of the Speedball book. Beautiful piece, Meredith. And one last look, I'm not showing you very much of Andrea's work today because Andrea is also the subject of one of the stories in the very next alphabet. So I want to save that surprise for our pages. But this wonderful piece is in the book. It's also going to be in the magazine. And I paired it here with Sashin's unkeyboardinate piece here, and using that as an excuse to show you a couple of pages of Sashin's black letter work. And Sashin really loves to alternate pen sizes in the for some of his pieces, much like Elmo did in his bookhand. He does it with black letter quite a bit. So this is a recent one in great colors. And this is an Indian prayer that has a terrific color throughout. So the other editor of the book was Suzanne Cunningham, who is really well known in the pointed pen circles, and she was selected to be an editor to take care of the pointed pen section. So she arranged for almost all of the pointed pen artists, and she also did this incredible. I find this is another piece that I just laugh whenever I see this. It's so much fun to see the word copperplate exploded into its individual strokes. So it acts like a instructional piece as well as something that can be read, and it's just fun to look at. Really wonderful. I don't know if Suzanne was in the audience today, but boy, I really love this. And to show you a little bit more of Suzanne's work, she didn't submit as much work to be put in the book as Sasha and I put in the pages. So there's one spread with 3 pieces of her work, as well as her page on flourishing, her page spread on flourishing. But this is something that I found on social media just a few weeks ago, pencil sketches for flourish caps. And here's a few of the pointed pen variations from the book in various places. Andrew van de Mivre and Sashan's really modern take on pointed pen variations, and Rachel Yollop's modern. I think she has a name for this style. Suzanne likes to use it as well, but I forget what the name is. And then there are 2 pages of monograms by Graham Caraway, I hope I'm remembering that right, and Skylar Chubak. I've got the book right next to me here. Let's see if I'm getting that name right. Sorry, let me check. Graham Caraway, yeah, good. But the one pointed pen person I really wanted to bring into the book was Don Marsh. This was just an envelope, the address on an envelope. The guy's name, it was an art director that he was doing some commercial work for, and he sent some correspondence to him, and this was on the cover of the envelope. Just spectacular stuff. So I've got one more piece of a little bit of Don's work here. There'll be more in the Chicago show. This is the name Pamela getting increasingly psychedelic and illegible as it goes along, but 3 different Pamelas by Don Marsh, a Cincinnati calligrapher. And then for the decorative pen work, we had 2 page spreads, one by Heather Held and one by Jake Weidman. The deer and the fish are both in the book, but that feather is not. And I've got another piece by Heather, some of her Italian round hand, both the caps and the minuscules with the caps here on this page. Suzanne had asked another man to do the Italian round hand, but I found Heather's just as beautiful. So I'm really happy to be able to show you this, something that didn't make it to the book. Now, the third of my favorite page spreads in the book was this one, introducing the flat brush. And we have Victor Cam's alphabet on the right. That is the cover of the current issue of Alphabet. In fact, I bought this piece from Victor with the intention of putting it on the cover. And then when the book came along, I was like, yeah, let's use that. And John and George's piece. And I picked these pieces because they fit the space and they all look so different from each other. And then I realized after we had written the text for this, where we talked about the benefits of the brush being, besides the shape of the letters that it makes, it also reveals the texture of the paper, the opacity of the paint, and the evidence of the bristles themselves. And I realized that I had gotten, texture, opacity, and bristles in the illustrations without planning it. So it was a piece of serendipity that really felt worked out well. Don't look at this spacing. It's better in the book. Something happened here. But, this piece of George's, by the way, is when Julian and Georgia and I taught a workshop together at the Boston conference in 2010. This is something that she showed where she takes a flat brush and turns it on its side and uses it like sort of like the edge of the B-nib speedball, like Michael and Chiara do. But by putting pressure on it, it opens it up and makes a different kind of mark than the flat chiseled mark that we're used to thinking about with it. And I love the power of this piece, and I like the way all 3 of these pieces go together. John, again, allowed us to reverse this lettering here. It really showed the opacity of the paint better than the positive. And here's another piece that, so when Victor sent me that alphabet, he'd actually put it up for sale as a silent auction on Facebook when COVID first started. His one of his in-laws was having, he was financially impacted by the virus, and so he was trying to raise money for this relative of his wife's. And so as soon as I saw it, I said, that's a cover, I'm going to buy that piece. And then he sent me a great big load of other stuff. So he did this Friends of Calligraphy, especially for us, on this flimsy piece of tracing paper that didn't make it into the magazine. And then here's another one. There's a red piece that has this Neuland flavor in the issue, not in the Speedball book. But this piece was not chosen. So this blue one is in that same vein as the eloquence piece that's in the latest journal. And one of his new concepts is to do writing with two tools at once. So both this alphabet, which he also did for us, and the Mixtitius are using a flat brush and a ruling pen in the same letters. So he's alternating back and forth, and you can tell by the spatter of the edge of the silhouette of the letters, which was done with the ruling pen. And it's so thin, I have a feeling he's using one of those Allen Arail pens. What do they call it? The Easy A pen, is that the name of it? So I think he's using that and a flat brush. One of the artists that Sashin invited, but is also a friend of mine, Giuliano Bacci. He's an Italian brush maniac. And this is his ampersands, A's and ampersands piece, all done with a flat brush, but this is a round ferrule brush, like a sign painter show card brush that is paletted to a chisel. And here's a piece of that he also sent along that didn't make it into the book. And this is looks like it's more pen work, but lots of different sizes and variations in weight that he seems to specialize in. The ruling pen section, I didn't think of anybody but Peter Thornton for the ruling pen section. He's a wizard with a ruling pen, and Peter sent along two duck die that made it into the book. And the other thing that happened, I asked Peter if he could contribute a decorative cap for the decorative section, and he wrote back. He said, "Oh, let's use one of Sherry's." So this is his wife, Sherry Kiesel Thornton, and this made it into the book. It's much smaller than this. I thought you'd enjoy seeing the really delicate way she's handling the color, the watercolor with this. And then the second page spread of the ruling pen is devoted to Peter and Julian and Michael Clark. And so here are three of Michael's pieces, and in the upper right is Julian's terrific ruling pen caps. And so as long as we're talking about Michael's work, I wanted to put in a couple of recent things that Michael has posted. This is a piece that he just posted on Facebook the other day. And he said he was testing tools. So Sincerity was done with a ruling pen, and Trust was done with a Speedball Elegant Writer. The Remembrance is an A nib. Remember, the A nib is the square nib. And he really likes to soften. When he writes with the A nib, he goes back in and plays with it to get a softer feeling. Then the Faith is a pointed brush, and Blessings is a Browset nib. And this is also something that he just posted. This, I'm assuming, is a really thin B nib. And this is for the Sisters, wait, it's the next one, Sisters of St. Clair. This is a cover for a brochure that they did. And you could see just how lyrical Michael is with the A and B nib Speedball. And he's always said that he wanted to see if he could get the flowing feeling of a pointed brush with a pen, was the original motivation behind working with a speedball B this way. And then this really classic italic of Michael's was also for the Sisters of St. Clair, which is an order in Saginaw, Michigan. And Michael and Peter Thornton used to teach at a retreat in Michigan in repeated years. And Michael became friends with the Sisters of St. Clair, and they were selling oils. Oh, I wish I could remember this. Michael, can you tell us what the story behind this? Are you still there? Okay, no. Anyway, Michael's classic italic, and there's one of his typefaces that he designed. Pouty is the name of that typeface, is very similar to this, but this is hand lettering. Look how each letter is different, 2 different S's, 2 different E's. Wonderful work. So the pointed brush section, the Summer Grass by John at the bottom was done in green ink, positive on a pale page, and that's the way we ran it in the book. But for I always like to reverse something like this that has tonal qualities, just to see what the reverse looks like. And this came out really nice too. We stayed with the original version, but I thought you'd like to see the what happens when it got reversed. And then this really deceptively simple line of pointed brush lettering by Georgia in the middle, also wonderful. And here is Georgia working on a really textured paper with the pointed brush, but it has that same kind of texture feeling that she was getting out of the flat brush used on its edge. And none of these are in the book. Actually, the Georgia at the top is in the book, but the rest of this is all work from Georgia. And can you see, I don't know if you can remember that Libeo by Elmo van Slingerland, but both the Yanni and the portfolio words here really have that same kind of flavor. So I'm wondering if that was just a product of the way Elmo was using the brush, or if he was influenced by Georgia. One of these days we'll ask him that. But the Libeo and this portfolio have sideways dots on the eye, and I hadn't seen that in any other place. I just noticed it last night with Elmo's piece, but I've always loved it in Georgia's portfolio. And a couple more from the brush section, Sashin's circular pointed brush and Chiara's combination of flat brush and pointed brush on the lower left. Luca Barcelona's piece here was done with a Tombow, one of those brush pens that is just a piece of rubber like plastic or vinyl that is in the shape of a brush. So we have a page on that. Sashin really wanted to have that kind of tool be featured in the book as well. And then these caps, the letters in the middle are by John Stevens. And I never would have guessed these were done with a pointed brush, but so they're kind of built up. And John talked about how his students, when they're being, is subjected the right word, subjected to learning the rigors of formal Roman brush caps, in the middle of that, John will say, or you could do this with a pointed brush, and he finds that they relax quite a bit when they're doing these kind of Roman caps that are a little bit drawn, and they relax a little bit, and then they can attack those flat brush Romans again with renewed inspiration. When we get to there's a whole section that we called versals, drawn, and multi-stroked, because it was the building up letters in any manner that needed to happen. So on this page, we're looking at Gemma Black in the lower right, and Andrew van de Meuvre in the panel in the middle, the maroon panel in the middle, and then Lisbeth's drawn letters at the top. And the interesting thing about Lisbeth's when she does almost all of her work on paper, she is a wonderful calligrapher, but she's much more interested in drawing letters. And for a letter like this, you wouldn't think it, but she uses a speedball C for these kinds of letters. And it enables her to use it a little like a calligraphy pen and then turn it on its side and use the edge for a really sharp edge along the side of it. So it's her favorite tool for drawing letters is a speedball C, the flat one. And then we have here Sheila's exemplar of, and the thing about this, it's not just one alphabet. She's taking us through 3 different styles, as well as all the different details of constructing versal letters. And this is another one of those exemplars that I made from a single color page, and reshaped it to fit the space, and took out her instruction because really the illustrations are showing what's going on so beautifully. She had the space in her book to explain it completely, but really the illustrations themselves tell the story in a really wonderful way. And again, it's so much fun for, I'm a slob in life, but it turns out I'm really OCD when I get into Photoshop to go in and separate a single color thing into 2 colors. Boy, I just got lost in doing this. It was one of the big surprises of the book, was to find out that doing that kind of work was fun for somebody with my neurosis. So here's a little bit of Andrew's work. He recently sent this beach note to Lisbeth, and this was a birthday card for me. It's really a pretty amazing monogram, 4-letter monogram of my first name there, but it's so characteristic of the way Andrew has this lyrical movement, and his decorations have this old-fashioned flavor in such modern looks. He's got his own flavor to lettering. He's definitely a wonderful original. And of course, what he's doing with beach calligraphy is astounding, that he built his own tools to do this kind of work. And no matter how many people are trying to do this, he is the original of that stuff. And here's a little bit more of Lisbeth's work. This is a piece that says, "What a beautiful disorder," in French. And this was a piece that she and I traded pieces for me to get this one. And she sent this process piece of her signing it in gold, and sent me the picture before the piece was done and sent to me. So here's Julian's. This was in the book. It's also in that section of multi-stroked letters. And this was the cover of Alphabet for the first issue in the current volume, based on Madeline Dinkle's work. And Julian and I share a really deep influence from Madeline, I should say. She said Madeline Dinkle. And Julian said that I could show you the original here, and you can see how, if you look at them closely, I know you don't have time, but you'll find that, like, let's look at this V, for instance, that the letters were touched up, but he did this all in one go, and the only letter that's pasted up here is the W. So he decided on a different W, but the V details, you could see that after it was done in Photoshop, he went in and perfected these letters like the perfectionist that he is. But what a piece of writing. And he based it on 2 things. The shapes of the letters came from this maker's piece of Dinkle's that's in the Alphabet issue, but not in the book. But Skeleton Key actually is in the book, and she was somebody who really loved to use multiple strokes to get her letters to be the way she wanted them to be. So there you can see that building up these things, and she was very loose about it in the Skeleton Key piece. as well as the extra stroke for the wedge serif, as well as a separate stroke for the slash of the thin line of the serif itself. And I'm just crazy about that. Julian really points to this piece as being influential to him. And you can see, look how she's leaving that little dot of air in the place where she's made the slanted serif, and then a separate stroke for this. So I just love this idea of having multiple attacks at the serif itself, as well as the letters. And you can really see it happening there. Look at the top of the H, the ascender in the H there, that separate slash for the serif, as well as the diagonal stroke down to the right for the wedge serif. Really tremendous piece. And then this is a piece that I did being influenced by both Dinkel and Friedrich Poppel with this. Can you see here where he's sliding the pen to make that thin serif, as well as doing the wedge serif and then the main stroke. So these, Kadich talks about the idea that a letter is written as long as it is the least amount of strokes necessary to make the letter that you want to make. So even though this is, 1, 2, 3 strokes for, say, a capital I, it's still writing by Kadich's definition. I just cannot stand how gorgeous this N is. It's one of the most beautiful letters I've ever seen. And you can see me trying to come close to it or working with it, but boy, that N more than anything else in Poppel's piece. So also in the Versal section, we have Claire Whitaker's New Year's cards. Look at how many different twos she has, and they're all faithful to this flavor. And it's been happening over this last decade. The 2012 made it into the book, but I thought I'd show you a couple more of her her New Year's cards, because this style is so identifiably hers and wonderful. Now, Ewan's design piece, this is on the same page with Julian's multiple stroked alphabet. And when I was at Ewan's house, November of 2019, I was able to see the original of this, but I have been in love with this since the early 1990s, when we ran it in alphabet in black and white. And so to see it in color like this with the gold, there were two versions. This is the one that he didn't finish, but this was the finished piece on this piece of vellum. Really wonderful. And yeah, here it is. It inspired the masthead for that issue back in 1992. And this was the illustration inside the magazine. And even now I'm still doing this idea of having the masthead of the magazine reflect inspiration or influence from somebody that's featured in the magazine. So Ewan was the one there. He did it freehand, but this was constructed with an oval template and rulers. So I sort of turned his free form stained glass looking lettering into a mechanical system. And if you've been a FOC member this long, look for this cover. This has the big story on Ewan, and it also has the big story on Speedball and Ross George that was inspired by the release of the 22nd edition. So there was a story on Ross George written by Mark Otis, and then the Speedball, the review of the Speedball book of the 22nd edition. While we're in the decorative section, that top left A is in the book. The other two you haven't seen. Julie Gray's amazing constructions, cut paper constructions. She's astonishing. Julie Gray's A's. And here's a guy I met down in Mexico. There's a really vibrant scene going on in all of Latin America, actually. Tremendous original work being done everywhere. This is Jonathan Cuervo Cisneros, who's lives in Mexico City and does these tremendous decorative letters. I've got just a few things here. This is his real signature look. He's even designed a typeface to go along with this woven outline, as well as this decorative cap on the right. And how about this for animated letters, using the colors and the symbols from the what do I want to say, the mascots from the Mexican flag to make the word Mexico. Really incredible. And here's a monogram, a BR monogram, and then a logo for a bakery. The SW, the name of the bakery must have had the initials S and W. So SW Cupcake. And here's a kind of a zoomed out look at Tanya Crossingham's decorative letter that is in the book. She's an Australian, but she's now living in Finland, and she does really elaborate, gorgeous, traditional, but still modern, illuminated and illustrated work. You look her up on the internet, you'll get an eyeful. And these didn't make the book. I guess, you know, this space was so limited, and these are just so well known, but it really pained me not to have some of Sheila's decorative lettering. She's just the master at this this miniature painting. These are both so wonderful. I never saw if Julian and Sheila made it to the showing today, but if you're there, Sheila, I love you, and I love this work that you do like this. I think that the Roundel of the Seasons is one of the 7 wonders of the calligraphy world, and both of these pieces are in that amazing use of color and detail that she shows. So the sign painting section was really truncated, and it was hard for me to do that as a sign painter and a letterhead, but we did get a few great examples here. These are all in the book, and I just want to focus on a couple of them for a second. I wanted you to be able to see Mark Otis's, this is a 3-story mural on a parking garage in Stockton. If you ever get over to Stockton, you can find this. It was done just for the heck of it for a letterheads wall dog meet, where these maniacs will descend on a town and paint free, gorgeous, detailed murals just for the sake of having fun with their wall dog friends. And this was the one that Mark designed and led the team that painted this on a parking garage in Stockton. So hopefully you can get over and take a look at that. And here's another piece of his. This is a cutout piece just on MDO plywood, but look how 3-dimensional this is, I guess, I don't even know if this is fictional or real, if there's a sign painters union in San Francisco that Mark designed this for, or if this is something for fun. And then Dave Carell was the other one on that page of casuals. And Dave is a type designer. He designs typefaces for letterhead fonts, which are traditional or sign painting flavored typefaces that they make for the sign painting crowd, actually, sign painting market, for people to bring into their computers and use for sign making. But he does these wonderful casual scripts. And he had a thing for a while where he was doing a different piece every Friday called Casual Friday, a play on words with the idea of a sign painting casual. And this is my favorite by far. The design of this is just brilliant, with this Art Deco letter and all the information being pretty much at the bottom of the letter and casual going across the top with a beveled edge. It's really subtle, but you can see that this is meant to be a beveled edge. And if you're ever playing Name That Sign Painter, Dave's tell is that he likes these S's where the upstroke kisses the downstroke rather than is integrated into the letter itself. And I thought I'd show you a few more of his Casual Fridays here. and then here's that S I'm talking about, where, and this is the alternative. This is what an S usually does, where the upstroke becomes part of the downstroke, but he likes to separate them out, explode that stroke just a little bit. So this is variegated leaf, and the rest are painted show cards. And this one, by the way, was painted on a refrigerator. They had a letterhead meet at a guy's place in Iowa. Dave is from Minnesota, and so Dave did a demonstration on the shop refrigerator. Mike Gold is featured in the book. This piece is in the book. Mike is a really flowing, natural calligrapher. I mean, he lets it fly, and it looks like him and nobody else, and it just feels so well. While we're talking about the word casual, it feels that way, and so spectacular. He recently sent me a piece that I'm not going to show you because it's going to make the pages of Alphabet one of these days, but this was the envelope that it came in, and I just love how immediate Mike's calligraphy is. He was, of course, a lettering artist and art director at American Greetings for decades, and so he can do controlled work. And both American and Hallmark, for a while at least, they had really sophisticated calligraphy in the greeting cards. And Rick Cusick, of course, is the spearhead, was the spearhead at Hallmark, and Mike took that kind of flavor of his natural hand to the greeting card lettering at American, along with Martha Erickson too. And then here's another piece. This is a piece on canvas, actually. Joyful lettering. Mike was part of a group of some lettering artists in New Mexico from when he lived in New Mexico, Scribes 8. And what they do is they agree on a project, and all 8 of them make an edition of 8 hand-done pieces that they then trade with each other. So when it's over, they all have 8 different originals by each member of the group. And this was a piece that he started, but it was a reject, and I ended up getting the reject. And so I dug this out last night. Mike is kind of famous. He and Judy Melvin really like this combination of yellow and orange with black on top, really powerful color combinations. And talk about multiple strokes, that S has got multiple strokes. Now, one of the, we have 2 foldouts in the magazine, and I mean in the Speedball book, and I really want to give a shout out to Kelly again for this, that she never said no. It was always, whenever I had a question, she said, why, sure. And I said, can we have a fold out? And then later on, I said, can we have another fold out? So here's the second fold out. We have Andrea Wunderlich's work along with Andrew and Don Marsh on the right, and then Amity Park's diptych on canvas on the top left, and Harvest Crittenden's gorgeous, what would we call this kaleidoscopic piece of hers. And then the right page folds out, and our own Judy Dietrich has this really wonderful piece about the Dutch calligraphers. She wrote the copy as well as did this piece. This piece, by the way, is also in the Harrison collection. And I thought we'd just take a chance to stick our faces in Judy's calligraphy here, because again, talk about audacious. This apparently is pretty historically faithful, but doesn't look how modern it feels, and all the different angles that these ascenders and descenders are interacting with each other. Just amazing. Judy, I send you a kiss for this incredible piece. This is a page spread in the gallery section of the book, where we have Georgia and Gemma and Sherry Trial and Yukimi all on the same spread. And those of you who are FOC members will recognize the pangram on the right by Sherry. It was the cover of the previous issue. And but I thought I'd show you this next. This is the series that those two pieces by Georgia underneath her Gertrude Stein quote. This was the chess box series from the late 1980s. And so she got to do lettering for Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry and Willie Dixon, Bo Diddley. It's all incredible work. And this is, boy, this is a job that I really would have loved to have, but I certainly couldn't have come anywhere close to doing the wonderful work that Georgia did. The Muddy Waters box actually was embossed a little bit. So the letter came out kind of like a soft convex letter. They didn't do that with any of the others, but you can see the shadows on that one. And then here's some more of Sherry's work. I wanted to show you a few things that weren't in the book and also were not in the article about Sherry, the 2 issues ago. This pulchritudinous piece here was, I really wanted to put it in the magazine, but Randy Hassan did a story on Sherry for Scripsit, and he used it in there, and I was trying not to repeat. So this is Sherry's, and if Sherry's in the audience today, maybe she could tell us how big this is, but Sherry works miniature as well, and some of these things are, she belongs to the Miniature Society of America, and some of these things are impossibly tiny. The round piece that is in the issue on the purple page is something like 2.5 inches across. So this is something that's probably pretty small. And then this is a very recent piece. I just pulled this off of Facebook from a couple days ago. Sherry Trial, Logophile. She's a lover of words and a lover of these miniature animals, creatures in her work. And we're getting near the end here. This is this is the closing spread of the book, and it's Andrew van der Merwe again, and he does citations and proclamations for the city of Cape Town in South Africa, and they're just amazing pieces. Oops, let's see. I thought I had a detail there, but I don't. There's a detail in the book, so you can get in and see the unique things that he does with the shapes of his letters, while it still is in something as official and has to be a traditional kind of look, and he turns it into these modern wonderlands. He's just making just the most beautiful work imaginable down in Cape Town. So this was, I want to leave you here with, these 3 things, the 3 wishes for all of us as people, as well as lettering artists. The Sherry's piece about hope, it's a hopeful time, and Harvest's, I don't know if you think about this as a rather than a noun, a phrase of nouns, it's if it's a command to love letters, again, a kaleidoscopic look at that, and then Mike Gold's One Stroke at a Time. All kinds of things to keep in mind as we're going forward in the 2020s. And we'll leave it with Hobie here. I don't know what this was for, but it's not the end. We're all going to keep making letters. We're all going to keep enjoying our friendships with each other as lettering artists. And it's a really wonderful time to be alive and watch spring coming on after all this terrible year-long winter we've been having, and but all the friends that we've been making internationally with these Zoom meetings. So I'm so thrilled that you're all here today and that you had the patience to listen to me go on and on, but I'm done now. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carl. I want to remind everybody that this lecture was recorded, is being recorded, and it will be available at the end of May. We will send an email to you, to everybody who registered for the lecture, and you will receive a link to the recording. So now, if you have questions for Carl, you can unmute yourself and fire away. Anybody?
No questions. That's great.
Well,
See-
Carl, I have one question. Are the Scribes 8 in New Mexico still active?
Yeah, even though Mike moved to Cleveland decades ago, they still do that. As far as I know, the only one I remember for sure that's in it is Diana Van Stetson, or no, it's just Diana Stetson. I'm sorry, not Diana Van Stetson. And she's moved a little farther away from lettering into her painting, but they're all really different artists. So when they do one of these projects, they end up with 8 completely different pieces, and they all have originals with each other. We would have to ask Mike when was the last time they got together and did one of these things, but it's probably moved into something more like an annual event, if not semi-annual. So we'll have to ask Mike or Diana. Was that Carl Crossgrove that asked that question? It sounded like you're,
Yeah,
because you're in New Mexico now too.
right.
It's not a group that they're accepting new members. It's just these original 8 have always done this thing, and I know that it's got to be sporadic, but it's somewhat regular.
So is the book available now?
The Speedball book is definitely available. I think Kelly might be able to answer this question, but I think John Neal is the quickest way to order it. I've heard from some people that they were waiting a little longer from Paper and Ink Arts, but Paper and Ink Arts is offering it as well.
What is the best way to do research?
Keep your eyes open all the time. Whenever I travel, I try and find out if there is a place to go, where their lettering has been gathered. There's lots of museums that do specialize in this stuff, although not nearly enough. And just, now with social media, so many people are posting work that you can find out who current people are, and there's also lots of information online. So I almost don't know a good answer to that, because I've just always followed my nose for that stuff.
Carl, if I can interrupt, every museum and most universities in the world and the Vatican have now made most of their collections, both manuscripts and art, available digitally. All you have to do is go to the museum website and look for their digital collections. So that's one way to do some research and have fun.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Someone asked about seeing the Susie Taylor piece that was blank in the slide.
Oh, right. Okay. Let's see. Trying to remember where I put it at. It might be downstairs. Talk to yourself. I'll be right back.
Grendel, did you have a question or something to say?
Yeah, I did, but now Carl's gone wandering off, so I'll wait till he gets back.
Well, why don't you say something about doing research on the website for Letterform Archive?
Oh yeah, I was gonna shamelessly plug Letterform Archive.
Yeah, shamelessly flog it. Come on.
A great resource for doing research, because now we have the online archive and we have thousands of pieces currently digitized and available for anybody to browse. And we also have a cool new feature called tables, where you can organize your images on a special table for your own personal reference. And finally, you can search either just sort of wandering around on the website, or you can put in lots of different specific metadata and search terms to find exactly what you're looking for. So definitely check out the online archive. That's letterformarchive.org/online archive, or OA. And is Carl back yet?
I'm back.
Yeah.
So can we make the screen where I get the whole screen?
Yes, I'll do that now.
Okay. So it's got this pattern in red where she just changed the pen, the color of the pen. But let me go a little bit closer so you can see
Oh, yeah,
how
wow.
wonderfully consistent she is with the letters. And then how impressive the amount of work is.
And what is the text or the feeling of the text?
Say again?
What is the text or the author or the intent?
You know, I don't know that. I was trying to read it last night. It starts off, it says, Primary Chief Barda O'Elfian. So sometimes it looks like it's a foreign language. And then in other places you can see English. There's the word Lord. It's hard to do this backwards there. So I think it's random words. I don't think that it is. How does it end? Let's see. Boy, it's so hard to. Yeah, I think it's kind of nonsense. She was just practicing. There's in the Susie Taylor issue of Alphabet, you know, we had a memorial issue for her after she passed away in 2016. There was another piece of a full page of rustics that we printed in that issue. So if you could take a look at that, I think it was volume, what would that have been? Volume 42, the second or the second or the third number of volume 42. Susie's picture's on the cover. So there's more of her rustic in that. Okay.
More questions?
Oh yeah, Grendel here. I had a question.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about Hobie Macquarie and all that wonderful comic book lettering, that really got me intrigued. And I'm wondering if that is now a lost art or if there are still people doing hand lettering for comics.
You know, that's something that I don't keep up on. I just, you know, I just had that strange run-in with this one guy who set comic book type and said he was the lettering artist. So
I know a little bit about it because my daughters both work in the anime, manga, comic book world, and my youngest daughter has a degree from in sequential art, it's called. So these days, a lot of people do lettering online, as you mentioned, Carl, and it isn't quite as rote as it sounds. There's a lot of skill involved in it. They have to airbrush and change things in translations. That's what my one daughter does. But then there's a guy named Mark Simmons who teaches at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and he teaches comic book lettering. So it's still being offered.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, too bad we can't get Hobie to teach a class in that.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in Mark, you can look him up on Instagram or Facebook. Mark Simmons, Simmons.
Do you want to put that in the chat, Evelyn?
Oh yeah, good idea.
I'd like to thank Carl. I'm here in Kalamazoo. This is Tootie Horn. I
Hey,
had
Tootie.
class with I had a class with Carol DeBosch today, and I couldn't get to the beginning of this, but you just are outstanding in the research you do, and all the names that you've got between your ears there, and all these artists. It's wonderful. So thanks for the part that I did see.
Well, thanks for showing up, Tootie. You know,
We'll have to come back and go to the Gilmore and get some more hood pictures.
yeah. My secret about research is that I'm interested. You know, that you just, whatever you're interested in, you search it out. And so that's the only secret. If it was hard work, I wouldn't do it. That's for sure. So.
Well, I was glad to have a chance to see it. Hi, Nancy Hill.
We have such illustrious people in the audience. I'm wondering if, if Ward or if John Stevens is still here. I don't know if Julian showed up or not, but if any of them wanted to talk about their pieces in the book, this would be a great time for that. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. Just stay muted if you don't want to say anything. But I see Ward looking at Linnea like,
Carl?
yeah.
Ward hi, Carl. That was terrific. Ward would like to talk about his hairy curly quotes.
Oh, great. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yes.
Cool.
Oh, the origin of those, I always liked Edward Johnston's quote marks. That's where they started. Was the original source.
Okay.
Edward
I never noticed them until I saw yours. I'll go look for those.
Yeah, his aren't as hairy as mine. But, that was the source. I saw those quotes and I thought, wow, that's the way quote marks ought to look.
Was that done with a reed?
Was it done with what?
A reed pen?
I'm not sure. It would not necessarily be reed, but bamboo.
Bamboo, okay. Well, that's right.
Or it also could be maybe a speedball C3, C4, C5, speedball, who knows?
Yep.
Or a browse, maybe a browse nib, 5mm browse nib, 3mm browse nib.
It's pretty big, Ward. Let me see if I can find that here. I think it's right close to the top. Yeah.
I just did it not that long ago.
This is the original here. Can you spotlight me again? Wait, or can I?
I'm pretty sure that looks like a bamboo reed to me.
Yeah, it's just the hairiness made me think of that. See the.
And I don't see so much hairiness in the quote marks as in the left-hand top curve of the speedball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. That it really does have a lot of air in it for a pen. So I was thinking that that you might have done that with a piece of bamboo.
Well, bamboo, I think that piece I brought back from Vietnam almost 60 years ago.
Wow.
That's the best bamboo I've ever found anywhere, and I've still got some of it left.
See, there's the red, whoops, no, it's that finger. The red dot on the exclamation point. He said, "This is the one I like best, but there's more to come." So I would have stopped there. So.
It really pays to stick around to the end of these lectures because you get all these goodies.
I do something like that most recent alphabet circle. That's not the end. There's in the C, D, E, there's something about that. It just needs to be maybe C, D, E, F. Maybe it needs to be a little tighter.
Well, that's what you said about the original.
You never finish anything.
Yeah, exactly. Rick Griffin, my childhood hero, art hero was Rick Griffin, who was a cartoonist and a psychedelic poster artist. And he had a retrospective in the late 1980s. And he borrowed work that he had sold. And they were hanging the show. And he went in and he goes, "Well, I got to fix that." And it wasn't his piece anymore. And he started painting on one of his pieces. He said, "A piece is never finished and doesn't matter, it's still mine, no matter if it's hanging in your house and I've got your money." He was going to go ahead and fix what he needed to fix.
Good for him.
Yeah. All right.
Carl,
yeah.
Thank you again. Since you did call me out, I don't know if I should weigh in here, but
well, please do.
Carl is unusual in terms of the research because he's gone an extra layer here, hunting down some people, going to museums. It's not just out of books. Carl and I roughly started at the same time, and information was not easily available. And I think I'll speak for you, Carl, too. It was part of the fun of having to track down things. Lots of stories just in that, if you want to expand on that, just think about the beginning days, first just walking around with maybe a Polaroid looking at signs, right?
Exactly.
And if I visited another town, that's what I had, a Polaroid. And so that's dating me, but, and not even knowing where to look until I remembered something in school about looking in bibliographies of books. And then all of a sudden, all of these books, most of them were out of print back in the day. There was no John Neal, or he was just getting started. But I had the New York Public Library, so I could get my hands on all of these out of print books. And I encourage everybody to do just that. As I said, we're used to instant information, especially with online. Is that about it, Carl? How you did it?
Well, yeah, just whatever I could find. And a couple things occurred to me when you started talking, is that when we were just starting to get in those sign magazines and the letterheads were blooming, as soon as we saw a good sign painter, we'd write that guy a letter and send him some pictures, and then he'd send those pictures back, and we started exchanging stuff. So it was, you know, the friend network has always been in place. It's just so much easier now with the friend network. But
yeah, I wonder if being easier is necessarily better. The value of information. Like first time I got my hands on a Villa Toots book, for instance, that was in the New York Public Library. That was not available in any store. There was no paperback edition, or even I had to wear white gloves in the New York Public Library to see my first copy of Origin of the Seraph, because that book, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's printed by Kadich.
Kadich did everything.
He printed the book himself. He writes all about a whole thing about Mohawk superfine paper that he printed it on, and you know, a true Renaissance guy. But that was not a book you could pull off the shelf and just look at. I had to make an appointment to see it. So, but I think my point is how highly valued this information was, and to find that we're all these great people. You know, when I first started working in the sign shop in letters, all my friends about that age thought I was nuts. Like, you know, letters, that's it. Then to find that there were all these people that preceded me and took it very seriously and brought it to a high level.
Yeah.
That was an amazing discovery. So I would compare it to, you go to a foreign country and you kind of go there looking around and discover a lot of things for yourself, versus taking the tour, sponsored by Carl's Jr. Yeah, so I just think it was highly valued, and now we just go down to a catalog, or even worse, we just go on Facebook. And you know, I'm not one of those, in the old days we had to walk through 10 feet of snow or anything like that. It's just something to be considered, that we keep finding new ways to make this information valuable, and how valuable it is. So imagine now you can just buy a paperback edition of some of these books, or watch a video. But I mean, YouTube, you know.
Well, you know, the other thing that you just reminded me of is that I got a lot of my attitude from other people, and the person I'm really thinking of is Rick Cusick, and he wrote that book for Lloyd Reynolds. He wrote a book for Ray DeBall. He wrote the book for Zopf. You know, all these things where it was a revelation to me that one generation of calligraphers was that reverent to a previous generation of calligraphers, and that just sank deep in my soul. You know, Rick Cusick is one of my major heroes, and that attitude about how important the stuff that came before us is, you know, well, heck, I put that in my bit of the foreword of the book, was that, you know, how much I appreciate all those people who left evidence for us. So,
well, that comes through. I mean, you know, you brought, in this particular time, Madeline, did you say her name was?
Madeline, she said Madeline Dinkle.
Okay, so I mean, of course, I saw that stuff in Heather Child's book, but you tracked it down and brought it back into present time, and it's very possible she would have been overlooked, or just sort of I mean, it's probably a lot of those artists, but you're bringing in focus. But I do feel kind of a kinship there, that we did our due diligence tracking down things. While you were talking, I was thinking of the Typophiles chapbooks and things like that, where you mentioned Rick Cusick. I mean, they put out a small edition, a very nice little book about one artist, William Dwiggins. If you guys are not familiar with Dwiggins, check him out, because he precedes most of this. And you would find something like that and you would really spend days with it, just looking at it. What a find. Compared to, and I'm guilty of this too, when somebody posts 10 pictures online, what do? Like that. So there is a thing, more than having a lot of information is the value of information, because if you spend more time with it, it gets deeper into your soul. Anyway, I think Carl is evidence of that. And I think he is sharing that these last few years, especially being the editor of Alphabet and now the Speedball book, and he's really doing a great job of that. So maybe that's time for me to shut the hell up.
Well, actually, I want you to tell us one more thing. John and I talked on the phone Thursday, and he told me this great story about when he met Vilu Totes. Can you? I didn't want to give it. I almost said it in the lecture, but I thought I shouldn't steal your line. But it's one of the best things I've ever heard.
Well, first I'm going to quote another San Franciscan. What a long, strange trip it's been, right?
Yeah.
So, as Vilu Totes very early on was a hero of ours, and it took a lot of effort. Jane Boyd in San Francisco, Paula Monroe in New York, coordinating, and Guillermo Rodriguez Benitez. Actually, if you look at some of the old books, you see all these book plates that Vilu did for Guillermo Rodriguez Benitez. Absolutely. They all tried to get a workshop with him or something. And he eventually did come to America, San Francisco first, and then Washington, D.C. second. So that's where I met him. Now, this is 30, let me think what year that is, 88?
88, yeah.
Yeah, do the math. So I was a hell of a lot younger and looked even younger than that. So he's walking around, he doesn't speak English, and he's got a translator that was appointed to him, because you got to remember the wall hadn't come down, none of that stuff yet. And I felt the translator was sort of a babysitter as well, appointed to him. But he meets me, we shake hands, and he tells me he's a fan of my father's work.
That is so funny.
I guess I better connect the dots a little better. He thought I was too young. That's the point. Yeah. So that was, what a strange thing is I broke out laughing, because, but also the highest compliment I could have gotten at the same time. Well, anyway.
Definitely. Thanks, John.
So, okay. So you guys are ready to sign off or something?
I don't know, Carl, it's up to you and up to Nancy also.
Any more questions?
I don't mind. Where am I going to go?
Outside, it's a beautiful California day.
I'll take a walk when this is over, but having us all together, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
It is a wonderful thing.
So Carl, this is Dean.
Hi, Dean.
John said she might be overlooked. I think she might have been overlooked here had not Carl brought her to our attention. But I certainly don't think she would have been overlooked where she lives and works. Her work is absolutely amazing and powerful.
Who's that, Madeline?
That's not somebody you overlook.
Who?
Madeline Dinkle.
Well, I could tell you a lot more about her. When I went around London looking for her work and could not find any place. I know it must be someplace that she would have given it, and I'm tracking that down. But I went to the McBride Library. The British Library had nothing visual, but they had those tapes, and those tapes were amazing goldmine. But she was not appreciated, after the fact. But a friend of hers, the woman who started Memorials by Artists, it's now called something else, the Lettering Arts Trust, I think. Her name's Harriet.
Harriet Fraser.
Harriet Fraser. She wrote to me after the article. I sent a bunch of them to Madeline's niece, and she sent one to her, and she wrote back and she said, I had a book started about her and I let it languish, and this article has made me start it again. So that book, there will be a book of her work sometime, I hope soon. And I've already volunteered to send all the pictures that I was able to gather. With her, I was going on ABE Books and trying to search out books that she had just done the jackets for. So I was buying those things until I met her niece, and that's when the floodgates opened. And so I think it's going to get going. So there will be a book on her. But she was, at the McBride, the guy behind the desk said, "Oh, my wife used to work with her, or my wife knew her." And I go, "You haven't ever worked? You haven't, did you collect her book jackets?" They go, "No." There was almost no interest in all the places that I was able to get to in my short time in London. But when you discover one thing, it leads you to the next thing. And that's the fun thing about when you're this sick about it, that you go and you get one little tip and you go to that person, and then you find the tip that person has to send you someplace. And so I would really like to keep going on her for sure.
Dean, did you have a question for Carl?
Not so much a question as a comment. I was just, because Carl, that was really good to see all that stuff of Hobie's. I was going to mention that Hobie's been frustrated because Signcraft, the magazine, went online, and he owns the complete every issue printed. And so I sent him a few samples of what the online looks like, and it's like, oh no, it isn't really the same. But it really speaks to what you and John were talking about, that you have a curated collection when you have a print thing that really helps you know whether, rather than looking at an online page that's just sort of 500 places to click. But the good thing about Signcraft's page is that you can buy any back issue that you want for a relatively reasonable price. Anyway, that was it. Thank you.
Well, that leads me a little more about Hobie. When John and I were talking about where you find stuff, Hobie's morgue, just the fact that anytime he saw any lettering that he liked, he ripped that page out of the magazine and filed it. And he has, so you do your own research with what you run across, and you save it. You've got to, you look at something and you go, "Oh, I like that idea. I'll use that someday." And then you turn the page and throw the magazine away. You've got to be proactive about your own education, your own store of knowledge and examples.
Hobie may not be online, but I Googled him once, and he gets mentioned in a very interesting magazine about casual lettering. And it talks about Hobie's collection, and a very nice article about other casual letterers of a few years ago. And that was a very nice article to find online.
Yeah. Well, I am the proud owner of an entire set of the broadsides, and they are treasures, Xerox treasures.
Carl, someone, Minna asked, how about focusing on non-Latin scripts next time? Minna, could you tell us what you mean by that?
Yes, I was wondering, when an Indian artist, of course, because of the colonies and all that, they're doing we all know English and we write in Latin and all. I mean, we can write the Roman scripts and all that. But there are so many scripts which are like, example, Devanagari script. It's so beautiful, and I'm sure you would know, if an Indian artist like Sachin can do the Roman alphabets, I know he can do Devanagari, and I've seen his work. So I was wondering if you had ever considered doing something like that, like the Urdu script and all that? They are so beautiful.
Well, as you know, I was only asked to do this one edition, and you know, their market, of course, has, you know, they're publishers in the English language. So, but as the editor of Alphabet, I'm interested in all kinds of stuff, but I would have to rely on somebody who knows that kind of work to present some. You know, if I tried to write an article on that, it would be wrong. I would just I wouldn't even know where to start, much less get it down. So it's that we're just working from what we know. And
right.
So see what I'm hearing. How do you say your name? Mina or Mina?
Mina.
Mina. So what I'm hearing, Mina, is that you're volunteering to write an article about this for Alphabet.
You are so good, Carl. I'm in Los Angeles, you know, so, but, you know, I did my graphic training in Bombay, you know, and Speedball was the first book which we were taught with. So I thought, you know, it's about time, you know, the Speedball could do the Devanagari or quite a few. There are so many scripts which are other than that, you know, and so many people are using the Speedball nibs. Maybe they should consider doing it in other scripts, you know.
Well, I think anything's possible, you know, especially if there's a market there. And if Kelly is still online, maybe she's filing this information away. But you know, the thing about, I do have to, this is something I meant to talk about today, but didn't. It's small, and we had a set number of pages, you know, so that, you know, if we went in and said, okay, we should be addressing the scripts of the world, or the, you know, the writing systems of the world, you got 4 pages, you know, what could you do, right? So, so it's got to be, you know, that has to be a focus that has to be decided upon at so many levels above, you know, we who got hired to put this one together.
Right.
You know, I always, the joke that I had with Kelly at the end was that I needed 1 more week and 8 more pages, 1 more week and 8 more pages. It was the only thing she said no about. There was a comment in here someplace where she said that saying yes was easy, but she never said yes to 8 more pages or another week of time.
No, but it's a beautiful work, and I really appreciate. I've got so many copies of different Speedball editions, but I started collecting from 70s because that was the first time when I was doing my graphics in Mumbai. You know, I was originally born in Kenya, and now I've been residing in Los Angeles for almost 40 years. So,
great. Well, thanks for
coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
As to what Mina said, I'm wondering how many of you started off with a Speedball book. And I know we can't see all the hands, but I'm sure that there would be a lot of them up. And as the co-editor of the 22nd and the 23rd editions, I want to congratulate Carl and team. You certainly packed a lot into this new edition, and I'm sure we all can't wait to see it. We're really grateful to you.
You haven't seen it yet, Judy?
I haven't seen it yet, although I saw online. I did see it online. So
my mother gave me her copy of the 14th edition, the one with the rainbow cover that she had when she was in school. So when I was a little kid, I got this considerably vintage Speedball textbook to learn examples from, and have had it that whole time.
Yeah, people don't throw them away if they, you know, if they know what they have.
It's also amazing that it has stayed as an affordable and accessible book. Right now, the distribution is limited, but I'm sure that, you know, once it gets going, it'll be all over the world. And, you know, for under $20, it has instruction, it has artwork, it has everything.
Yeah, that was Ward's.
Frequently tends to be the first thing that people see because it's in art stores, it's in stores that aren't just specializing in calligraphy. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Have we come to an end? Are there no more questions? I can't believe there are no more questions.
Everybody's hungry.
Yes, my stomach is rumbling.
I had one question, one specific question. This is Lee. Carl, you said Mike Clark had a type and it sounded like Condi, but I didn't get the name.
No, Pouty. Pouty. Michael, I don't know if Michael's still on the line or not, but some of Michael's typefaces he names after his kids in a way that teases them. And so Pouty, the italic script, was aimed at his daughter. I think his daughter's name is Jennifer. I'm not sure about that, but he called it Pouty. And then his most famous and most popular typeface is Pooper Black, which is a play on Cooper Black. And also his son had just been born, and that was his hobby, was the kid's hobby was filling diapers. So Pooper Black.
Excellent.
Yeah. Michael, are you there?
I see his name.
I'm here.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, I didn't want to mess up the recording.
Yeah. What did you name any other typefaces after your third daughter, your third child?
Frenzy.
Frenzy.
Is there a story behind that choice of name?
It was really frenetic when all three of them got crazy.
Oh, great.
The last one was Lucy Lee.
Michael, didn't Pouty come about because you would use your children's names for the fonts? And her name was already taken? And she pouted?
Requisite lower lip. And she could stick that out like crazy.
Excellent.
That lip was called a bird perch.
My father used to tell us that if we weren't careful, our lips would freeze that way.
Well, my grandmother used to say, at dinner, she says, if you don't eat that, I'll rub it in your hair.
Ooh. Oh. Well, I think that we've come to a natural stopping place.
Can I ask one quick question?
Go ahead.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Carl. It was so great to get to listen to you today. I was wondering, as far as I know, there's a lot of stuff at Letterform Archive that came from Ross George's granddaughter. Have you had a chance to look through that stuff?
I have, and it's, it's not just artwork, it is tools, his prototype tools and stuff. And Lee Littlewood actually is who was just on screen a few minutes ago, is the one who set all of that in motion. That Lee tracked down a granddaughter, still in the Seattle area, I believe. And
in Cle Elum.
What's that?
She's in Cle Elum.
Like I know where that is.
Oh, sorry. It's the middle of the state. It's on the other side of the mountain.
So it's not Seattle. Okay. At any rate, it's in Washington, where he worked. And he he went up and bought a piece and then sort of alerted those of us in the letterheads that she had the stuff and it was still available. And then it came to the attention of Letterform Archive. And, for a while, it looked like it was going to go to Speedball. I don't know how that it got diverted. Maybe a better offer or something. I'm sure there's a story there that we could find out, but Letterform Archive is where it is. So
yeah. And Carl Cosgrove says the whole archive is at Letterform Archive. Prototype pens, Ross George's tools, original art for early manuals, etc. That would be interesting to go see.
Yeah. I actually had the opportunity to go visit her before she shipped it all off. So that was quite a treat.
Randy did before it was shipped off. Randy went up there with his scanner. He brought a scanner so that he could sit in her house and scan that stuff. So a lot of the stuff for the 24th, and you know, we didn't talk too much about that, but I really consider the 24th and the 25th to be companion editions. It was because Randy and Angie had done such a thorough job for the history. It was the 100th anniversary that we felt like we were free to be more present day with the calligraphy rather than put in more of George's work. We felt like it's there in the 25th, I mean the 24th, and we can make the 25th modern, and who knows what'll happen when the 26th comes around. If the 24th is still around, then that could be liberating for more innovations for future editions.
Hey, Carl, since you do so much research, I just wanted to tell you how to say Sachin, not Sachin, with the cha.
Oh, Sachin.
Sachin. Uh-huh.
Okay, good. You know, he never corrected us in our Zoom meeting, so I've been calling him all along.
I just thought, you know, maybe he didn't correct it, but I just wanted to tell you because you do so much research, you know.
Well, and the funny thing is that he, in every meeting, he always called Suzanne Susan. That never changed.
Yeah, that's how we were taught. So
thanks.
In terms of history, when Joanne and I were working on the 22nd, we tried to put back some of the little insignias that were Ross F. George's on the work where they had fallen off. But Hunt itself had no archives. All they could come up with was two in-house newsletters mentioning the Speedball book. And that was it. Because you have to remember that it was a pamphlet. It was a teaching booklet. It wasn't a major text. It didn't have great importance.
A sales tool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I always remember
it does have major importance because it's the first thing that a lot of people get to.
True,
major
but
importance.
Right. It didn't have that cachet, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was only one small part of what Speedball did. They do
one small part. Right. You know, there's their printing equipment and their ceramics, and you know, there's a lot going on there. But I always, in the review of your edition, Judy, I wrote in there that said that this is you know, the revolving circle. The book sells the pens and the pens sell the books.
Sure.
And Judy, did you say that Mark sent you a first edition? He had a first?
Sorry, my internet had cut out and I heard you starting to say that. Yes, Mark Otis had a #1. And the reason he had it was because somebody had taken the time to bind it in leather. Because what I said before, you have to realize this was a paperback. Paperbacks are not meant to last. And it was only because somebody had bound it that he had that. And it was in the days before you could scan things and email. So he actually sent us this beautifully bound #1. That was quite a treasure.
Yes.
So I'm sure he must still have it.
Well, I've got something that's a fraction of that, but it's a hardbound copy of the 19th.
Wow.
So, hardbound.
Did somebody bind it?
Library, maybe.
Oh.
No. Well, I suppose they could have done that. Just take I thought it was published that way, but now that you say that, they could have just taken the covers of the pamphlet and then put it underneath the whatever this cellophane stuff is. But
I think that's the standard
kind of a
library
rarity.
thing.
Was that a library thing? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'd like to take a minute to say thank you to the behind the scenes people, Nancy Noble for hosting and being one of the technical help Raul Martinez is also a co-host, and Elena Carruthers. So thank you guys for helping.
Evelyn, I'd like to thank you for putting together the lecture committee, and the fact that we're able to, through the pandemic and all of us being at home, to be able to spotlight some wonderful people to give talks. And we had, I think, 3 last in 2020, and we're starting a new lecture series now. So thank you, Evelyn, for spearheading all of this.
You're welcome. It's been great. It's going to be great. So stay tuned, everybody. We're going to have more. It's going to be hard to live up to Carl's, the level that Carl set. But we'll try.
It's a high bar.
It is a high bar.
Thank you.
Hey, Aria, say thank you, Carl.
Aria.
Say thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
This is Hosmer, Steve Hosmer's granddaughter. And Steve is my compadre in fanaticism.
She's busy.
I guess you don't want to talk.
She's busy.
She thanks you silently.
Yeah.
Too busy.
That probably won't last.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you all for coming. It's been a wonderful couple of hours, really wonderful.
Thank you.
And again, I want to remind you that you'll get a link to the recording at the end of May.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Nancy,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Carl.
Thank you.
Nancy, you
Thanks,
want-
Carl. Bye.
Thanks,
Carl.
Carl.
Ben,
Good to see you, Ward.
See you all.
Evelyn, what were you saying?
I just wondered if you want to end the recording and the meeting.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Elena.
Brilliant as always.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carl.
Bye,
Thank
Gina.
you.
Nice